Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to El Clásico of chess. Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura. This is the first of 2 days of the finals of the second Freestyle Chess Grand Slam event in 2025, which basically means they play chess, but they shuffle the back row of pieces. They're in Paris, France, and what an incredible final this was. And yesterday also was an incredible UFC event in Miami, and Alexander Volkanovski is an inspiration. Now, on that note, here we go. That's all I've got for you as an introduction. If you'd like, there are still tickets remaining for my European tour in Brussels, London, Vienna, Berlin, Munich, and Warsaw, Poland. Let's kick things off. So, this is our starting position, okay? Magnus opens with the move c4, and Hikaru responds with the move c5. Now, what's funny is that both this game, the game for 3rd and 4th place, and one of the games for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, I believe 5th and 6th place, started with exactly this type of concept. So, knight c3 was the move played by Magnus, knight c6 by Hikaru. Black can castle, actually, and so can white already. The king and the rook are in the exact correct position. And to castle this way, you would need to move the king, so the knight and the bishop would need to be out of the way, so the king would hop over there. If you're confused, if regular chess is already difficult and you don't understand why they do this, I understand. It's just a slightly different form of chess to try to keep things spicy and interesting. Now, this game gets spicy and interesting on the very next move, because Magnus develops his knight to the f3 square, developing the knight, controlling the center, and Hikaru immediately overcommits to the middle of the board, controls the d4 square very nicely, so white cannot easily play d4, activating his knight and his rook, but he gives up a lot of equity on the light squares. Now, this type of opening is seen in different Rossolimo Sicilians. That might mean nothing to you. Don't worry about it. But the next move is absolutely wild. So rather than playing the position slowly, Magnus actually uncorks a gambit here, which is the top move of the computer. He plays b4. These types of ideas, b4, targeting a pawn and a knight like this, do occur in the Sicilian defense. So it's really interesting to see Magnus utilizing ideas from mainstream chess to, this format. Now, you might be looking at this a little bit confused. The point is that if black were to take on b4 with the pawn, which is not what happened in the game because you see the board turned a lighter color, white would play knight d5, activating the queen and targeting this pawn. And it's not easy to make a move here. If you try to defend your center pawn, white very quickly generates a very powerful initiative, developing basically every single piece. Actually, instead of even the bishop there, the bishop even here is stronger. And white has a lot of compensation for the given up pawn. Instead, Hikaru takes like this and gives up this pawn. So Magnus is ready to open up the light squared bishop over here. Hikaru plays g6. That attacks the knight in the middle of the board. And now Magnus plays a very nice move, d4. So Magnus has a lead in development. Hikaru still has every piece there on the back rank, right? He also obviously has some weaknesses. And he's trying to fight off the back rank, whereas Magnus is trying to activate as many pieces as possible in as little moves as possible. In the early going, it's definitely Magnus who gets out to a better position. Now Hikaru castles, because he's got to commit his king somewhere. He commits his king to this side of the board, and generally in this format, when you commit a king to a side of the board, sometimes it's good, but actually frequently castling is a little bit of a dicey choice, because suddenly, knight g4. A very nice move by Magnus. I mean, he's basically just looking at the dark squares near the king. He really wants to play knight to h6. Or bishop to h6, right? Now, if black were to play the move bishop takes d4 here, you know what Magnus would have done? He would have sacrificed the rook. 7 moves, 8 moves into the game, and the position here is already looking incredibly vicious. Queen takes d4, knight e7, knight h6 is mate. Like, black can lose this game just purely on the weaknesses of the dark squares near the king. Obviously, that doesn't quite happen. Hikaru plays bishop g7. I'm not really sure why this move is given a miss, but he's trying to protect the dark squares and put the king in the corner like this. And Magnus says, okay, fine. Now let's take a pause. I'm going to play d takes c5. Now, apparently d takes c5, played after 11 minutes of thought, was not the move. Magnus here had this amazing bishop to h6. Now, the idea is pretty straightforward. You're obviously just trying to remove the defender of the dark squares. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. Like, there are a lot of lines where Magnus can just give up his knight completely. Takes, take on c5 to open up the queen, sacrifice the knight here, discovered attack, and then try to pick the knight back up, right? Like, he could have had a lot of different lines where he plays bishop h6 and then dc5. He starts with dc5, and here comes Hikaru with the haymaker d5. So now this knight is purely hanging, right? And Hikaru wins back a very crucial moment of the game. Knight to h6 check, king to h8. And what I'm going to tell you now is this game was full of clutch moments. Like, if chess could have clutch moments, like a beautiful free kick, like Declan Rice, right? Or a very clutch three-point shot late into the game, Ray Allen, you know, clutch tennis shot down the line, one-handed backhand, like Federer style. Like, if chess could have clutch moments, this game was full of clutch moments. The first clutch moment is right here. As Magnus finds the only way to put more pressure on the position, it's not to take in the center of the board, it's to not castle his king at all and to play g4. So normally you put your king here. Yeah, he's not going to do all that. He wants to play g4, g5 and just anchor in the knight. This is a ridiculously deep move. Also, he's going to have his bishop open up now. Hikaru plays bishop e6, bringing a bishop to the middle, stabilizing the center, stabilizing the pawn on f7, also threatening to take on c4. The one thing holding the black position together is this pin, because it doesn't allow white to actually take in the center of the board with the knight. So Magnus plays pawn takes d5, knight takes d5. Hikaru has basically reached a total level of stability. And look at the time. Hikaru's up 7 minutes. He outplays Magnus over the last like 3 or 4 moves. In this position, Magnus was already dangerously close to getting a nearly decisive advantage, but he miscalculates, or maybe just misevaluates the position. And instead, we have takes, and bishop to b2. Now, this is just silly. I really don't know why the automatic. I think they should turn off game review for games above 2800, because this is not brilliant. Like, the knight is hanging, but the bishop hangs if you take the knight. I mean, it's just silly. Please, this should not be a brilliant move. Folks that make the game review, some moves are brilliant. This move is just normal. He wants to take the bishop, and he doesn't want to lose his queen. Hikaru moves the bishop, and now Magnus plays g5. This is epic stuff. One of the reasons this is epic is the pawn has just gone all the way up the board to anchor in the knight, which now doesn't let the king move. The bishop and the queen over here are hitting the dark squared bishop, and Magnus is playing purely on the dark square weaknesses, right? He's just playing on the dark square weaknesses. Knight e4 ideas going to those 2 squares. And by the way, black can give this check, and white would just move the king to the middle. Like, the king for white is actually safer, ironically, in the center of the board. This is the amazing thing when Magnus and Hikaru play each other. Like, you just see a whole nother, you see chess get taken to a whole nother level, and it's so fascinating. Now, rook takes d1, Hikaru trades, and I woke up around here and I thought, oh, he's going to be stabilizing the position. But instead of queen c8, targeting this pawn and maybe going to the light square diagonal, the best move here, according to the computer, is b6. And you know why? It's because with this trade, black activates the queen on that diagonal, and that is more important. Also, of course, a2 is hanging, but Hikaru needed to keep his queen eyeing that square. You know why? Because in the game, he didn't do that, and Magnus immediately went rook to g3, and now the queen cannot get to the corner. Hikaru needed to patrol the bottom right-hand corner of the board, but instead, rook g3 comes in, and not only is Magnus threatening just a potential rook lift in the future, he's also potentially threatening to go down the middle, and also the king will be able to walk to the right side of the board to safety, which it might have not been able to do so easily. By the way, I actually think you can castle here, but rook g3 and just leaving the king on f1 is exactly correct, and losing the pawn on c5 is not a big deal. It's not a big deal, because now there is no check, because of this rook, and now knight to e4, and Magnus is targeting the most important defender of the black king, the dark squared bishop. So he regains the momentum, and the boys are now playing a rapid game. 16 minutes on the clock, not a lot of time, but every time they make a move, they gain some bonus time. Hikaru, clutch move. Looking to trade the queens, also looking to potentially win the pawn on a2, to leave him with those 2 pawns on a and b that would march down the board together. Magnus says, I am the best endgame player of all time. Let's get rid of the queens. Bishop takes d5, and the most natural move, ironically, going back here according to the computer's preferred, which is, and then trying to trap the rook in the corner, knight to f6, and you talk about a guy that is going to make you suffocate. Look at these knights and the pawn on g5 defending them. Black is in a box. Magnus has Hikaru shoved into the right-hand corner of the board, but we're talking about the best defender in the world maybe on any given day. Second, if you count Magnus. But he grabs the pawn on a2, and he just goes for wild complications here. What Hikaru had to do here is maybe take on f6, bishop f6, and play the unbelievably counterintuitive just rook e8. Hikaru just had to sit there. Sit there as Magnus put the pressure on his king and basically say, you don't have a win. I'm just going to play a position like this where you cannot actually beat me because you don't have a breakthrough. Easier said than done. Hikaru says, no, let's roll the dice. Magnus is giving me the pawn on a2. I'm going to take it. It's my best practical decision to take the pawn on a2, and now I have an extra pawn. But now rook a3. The bishop goes back to e6. Magnus takes the pawn on a7, but now Hikaru activates the knight off the back rank. Knight to d6, defending the pawn on b7, threatening to go knight c4, and threatening a knight trade with knight to f5, removing this knight, and then potentially removing that knight. Magnus now, in 1 minute, finds the best move here. 1 minute on the board. f3. This is the best move. It's a slow, improving move, and the idea is to play e4 and control central squares while also potentially just walking the king forward. This is just the best move. A simple, improving move. The ball is back in Hikaru's court. He tries to activate his rook down the c-file. Now, e4 shuts the lights out on the knight f5 plan. That's a very, very important move for Magnus to find, but he doesn't find it. He doesn't play e4. In fact, by playing bishop to e5, he invites Hikaru to play knight f5. He is ready to play into Hikaru's idea. Knight to f5 appears. Magnus now takes. And now the craziest thing about this position is Magnus was right. He was right to trust his instincts because the best move for black is to take with the pawn. The best move for black is to take with the pawn that is insanely counterintuitive because these three pawns stand together. How are you going to do this? Double your pawns horrendously. Split your pawns so they can't even defend. Yes, the move is pawn takes f5, but Hikaru plays bishop takes because he's human. Because which human wouldn't keep these pawns together? How on earth do you bring yourself to play pawn takes f5? That doesn't make any sense. But the point is that then you would play h6, and in the future, you would walk your king out of its jail on h8. That is the deep hidden idea here of the endgame. But Hikaru, he might have even sensed that it was the right move, but you just can't play a move like that as a human. So you go here. But now the best endgame player in the world is going to turn the screw. This entire side of the board has been eviscerated. We turn our attention to E through H, 1 through 8, 32 squares to decide the game. The H pawn is going to come forward. The pawn is going to come forward. The king is going to come forward. At the right moment, Magnus will trade the right piece. Let's see him put in that work. Bishop back to E6, rook B4. Hikaru decides to trade and says, okay, I will defend this absolutely miserable endgame, but you still have to walk through my position and beat me. Magnus improves the position. Hikaru brings the rook off the back rank. He's protecting himself. Back rank mate. King to g3. Magnus, just effortless improvement, and now Hikaru goes for it. He didn't have to go for it. He could have theoretically played rook c8, rook c5 the entire time, and then it would have just been up to Magnus to demonstrate a level of technique. Probably would have tried to push the pawn to f5, maybe h4 first, but Hikaru decides, I'm going for it. Now, the craziest thing about this position is taking on h6 is the best move, but multiple grandmasters, including Judith Polgar, including Levon Aronian, who were watching this game, thought taking on h6 here only improves black's chances of a hold. Like, but how? I mean, it's just a free pawn. Magnus takes it. He plays like Stockfish. It is the best move. He is now up 2 pawns in an endgame, but his pawns are doubled. And not only are his pawns doubled, there is a hope for the black king. For now, it looks like the black king is just playing very, very passive defense. But here comes Hikaru. Practical decision-making in the endgame with the move g5. That's a very important move because it takes away squares from the white king and also king g6 and f5. And all of a sudden, black is in the game. This is incredible. This is high-level defensive stuff. And guess what? Magnus blunders. He plays e4. Dare I say blunder? At this level, this is a blunder because now all of a sudden after f5, Hikaru is back in the game. I told you about the clutch moments of this game. Suddenly, from the depths of a horrific, horrific position. Hikaru has emerged. His king is no longer boxed in. He's doubled 2 of Magnus's pawns. They can't even run into each other. Any rook trade now is an ASAP draw. You got to be a little bit careful, right? You got to be a little bit careful how you do it. But bishop trade, well, there's not going to be a bishop trade, but if the bishops fell off the board, black would have also some drawing chances in the rook endgame. Now, rook b7. Hikaru pushes Magnus's king back. His king now cannot come forward anymore, and rook c2 check. And Hikaru's drawing the game. Because the only thing that white can do is run the king this way and lose this pawn. And at that point, Hikaru won a pawn back, and his king just has to stay over here, not do anything ridiculous. Or white just bounces here and makes a draw. Of course, Magnus is not going to do that. And he gives up the pawn on h2. That's the only way to keep the game going. And for reasons I cannot quite explain to you, Hikaru here must have seen a ghost. Because he doesn't like where his bishop is currently positioned. He must have calculated a variation where the bishop comes under fire, and he puts the bishop on a2. And he just doesn't have any time for that. Magnus plays bishop f8 check, and Hikaru resigns out of nowhere. It was a game for the ages. Hikaru roaring back with h6, king h7, g5, and f5. The man literally used his last remaining pawn on the 32nd move of the game to generate the counterplay. He got everything back. And he put his bishop here because I think he of course, this was his whole idea. But he must have seen something where this bishop is hanging. Like maybe he calculated bishop f8, king g6, and this loses because after rook g7 here, there is this move. Like maybe he saw that the bishop hangs, and then, I don't know, he must have not liked something here. But yeah, if he plays rook takes h2, he survives. The king can always dance to one of the 2 squares. Like it depends where black moves, where white moves, but it's always a draw. And yeah, kind of crazy, but Hikaru did everything right. I mean, he was about to clutch the most unbelievable defensive hold against Magnus in quite a long time, but he goes down bishop a2. I'm sure he'll talk about what he saw or thought he saw, but Magnus wins. I mean, that was so tense. It was such a great game, and Magnus was putting the pressure. Hikaru was defending himself. Oh, but Magnus wins, and now Hikaru has to win tomorrow on demand to force a tiebreak. Now, of course, we have other games, and the other games are important, although they are surely not as popular. We have a very similar game here between Vincent Keymer and Fabiano Caruana. This is an important game because the winner of this mini match qualifies to the 3rd leg of the Grand Slam Tour, which is going to be in Las Vegas in July. This game, though, from the early stage, Vincent, has been regarded as one of the better players of this format, really high-level understanding, got a very strange position against Fabiano early. It looks like a Catalan almost, where white has these bishops targeting the queen side, black is up a pawn, but the position kind of sucks. But Fabiano just kind of like stubbornly defended his pawns. Vincent played bishop to e5, trying to kind of restrict the black position a bit. And generally what happens in this sort of Catalan is white makes some moves and ultimately wins a pawn back, but yeah, Fabiano was just like not giving the pawn back, not letting white make a move. And then he started creating his own chances, right? Vincent plays a nice move here. Of course, again, sort of a fake brilliant. Queen takes a2. And in this game, the boys just got to a position where, I mean, it's equal, Black has the bishop pair. They have B and C. If the B and C pawns get traded, you have everything on the same side of the board. But you still kind of have to play, and I did kind of get the sense that Vincent wanted to keep playing, whereas he could have probably played king g2, h4, and just, I don't know, shuffled his pieces back and forth. That's obviously an oversimplification, and that's what they did, But then knight b7, and suddenly here came Fabi with c4. And after this trade, queen b2, he doesn't even take the pawn back. He has eyes on the king. It's not easy to decide where to put the rook or how to even protect it. So the rook goes to d1. And suddenly Vincent can't move. Like suddenly Vincent is really stuck here. He goes queen a8, but after bishop takes c4, it's a very unpleasant position, and you're going to lose the chief defender of your king with bishop to e2 coming in, or bishop to b3, and it's like, where do you put your rook? You try to put it on f1, and Fabi's just attacking the king. Like, one guy's king is just simply weaker than the other. Bishop d5, Vincent going for a trade. e6, knight takes e6, sacrificing a bishop. Complete pandemonium here with 1 minute on the clock. Like, the guys literally have no time to calculate all of this. And when the dust settles, it's bishop. It's just the bishop for Fabiano Caruana. Now, what's funny is an engine here would never lose as white against the human. It would never lose. It would very expertly defend the position because all the pawns are on the same side, and it's kind of difficult for black to break through. But Vincent is a human. He is not Stockfish. And even though the position is actually holdable for quite some time, I think it's just a matter of time until something goes wrong. And I think that's what happened. I think, yeah, Vincent went for g4, which I don't think was necessary. I don't think he had to go for g4. I think he just thought it was a draw, but it weakens the white position simply too much. And as long as black is able to preserve either a pawn or go for a mate, he will win. And yeah, that's what Fabiano did. Overall, I think after 2 tournaments, this was probably the worst game from Vincent. I'm not saying that because I would have played a better one. I'm just saying he has demonstrated a consistently really, really, really high level in these games. And this one, yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a hangover effect from losing to Hikaru. Like, I think there's a level of it that's just like, it's hard to motivate yourself to play for 3rd and 4th, but, you know, the stakes are quite high. Here, there was some really, really, this was quite a game. So, Nodirbek versus Jan Nepomniachtchi. This is a battle for 5th and 6th place. And these guys, obviously, they play a totally different game than everything we've seen so far. They keep it completely symmetrical. In fact, I don't think there was a trade in this game until, like... Yeah, it took 15 moves for the first piece to come off the board. You know, like, they played... This is what normally, like, some sort of English looks like. An English opening, white gets the d5 square and, you know, has some pressure. b4 played, rook e8, queen to a3, and Jan Nepomniachtchi just going for it. I mean, again, in a game for 5th and 6th place, and, you know, like something like $10,000 to $15,000 difference, you try to have fun, you try to play provocative chess. Bishop takes f6 is a very nice move, and Nodirbek is just simply up a pawn. His position is just very nice. Jan plays bishop to d8, rook to b1, and, I mean, Nodirbek just has an excellent position. I have no idea how Jan is going to activate any of his pieces here. But that's why he's the one playing and I'm the one looking at the game. He opens up the position first and uses all he... There we go. h5, h4. Now I see it, actually. Yeah, now I'm starting to get the early signs of actually seeing it. Nodirbek just says, I'm not going to defend my king at all. I would rather go create stuff on that side of the board, pawn to c5. And Jan's like, okay, h4. Knight takes b6, Nodirbek sacrificing his knight to potentially walk his pawn into the black position and to take the knight on c6, of course. Queen g4, look at this. Jan abandons the entire, just whole queen side. Gone. Abandoning it. Queen takes c6, rook e6 from Jan. Ready to double up at a moment's notice, and pawn takes g3. I mean, you look at this position, losing this in blitz would be very easy with white. It's very, very simple to lose this in blitz. It's a very, very dangerous position. Knight d4, oh my goodness. Nodirbek could have played knight e3 here, counterattacking the queen, but after queen g5, I mean, it's not an easy position at all. What he has to do is just straight up give away the queen. So he loses the queen. Jan here, though, I think this is I think the next move is a... No. No. I think this is... Okay, so here the board breaks. It says black went here. That's not what happened. Obviously, he took the queen. That's what happened. Yeah, this did not happen. But this was probably the position. This was the position. So I think probably what happened is he took the... Yeah, it was probably he took the queen. Take. So that's what happened. But the broadcast board is broken, so it thinks that, yeah, okay. Sometimes that happens. I mean, it's 2025. I mean, nobody can invest in a better piece of hardware that, you know, just doesn't, you know, break. But anyway, bishop c7, rook b1. And yeah, Nodirbek in this game was putting some pressure on black, like he was putting the pawn on g6 and everything, but overall it was Nepo doing Nepo things. Just playing extremely fast, up 30 minutes on the clock, making it difficult for the opponent all the way to the bitter end. And bishop e3 comes in, bishop g1, queen h1. is just a mate, and the bishop also protects the king. And I mean, this is vintage Nepo. He wins the game. I mean, it's so frustrating to play him when he's on his game, understanding the position well, and he gets a very nice win. And now we have MVL versus Arjun Erigaisi, the only game that did not start with an English opening because, you know, MVL does things his own way. D4, D5. Erigaisi playing also, I don't remember if this is 7th and 8th or 5th and 6th, to be quite honest, but these guys don't have a qualification spot for the next event. They will have to requalify, but okay, they're playing for some points. Rook D3, I don't think there is a sum of money you could pay me to play the move Rook D3 in this position. Like, I would play Knight D2, Knight C3, bring the queen back, Knight A3, Knight B5. Rook D3 is a deep move. I mean, Maxime is just a better player than me. Obviously, he's trying to, yeah, no, he's not even trying to double his rooks. He's trying to go here and try to play for C4. But his rook is just going to become a slight problem. He brings it back, which is kind of hilarious. And then, yeah, Erigaisi just played very smart. He went for the light squared bishop exchange, removing it from the king over here, and then he put his knight in the middle of the board and just kicked out the white knight. And MVL tried to create some complications, but once Erigaisi got here with a dominant central pawn presence and perfect coordination, and up 17 minutes on the clock, dude, Erigaisi is a problem. Erigaisi is a really, really, really good player. Like, he's so strong. And yeah, now he just has to execute a good defensive and offensive strategy. And he's going to put some pressure. MVL, one of the best defenders and kind of tricky players in the world, but a little bit optimistic here. Probably Rook C2 is better. He gives up the rook, and Erigaisi meets a knight attack with a knight attack. And this is just a winning position for black. He has a rook for a knight, and every endgame will be winning because white's knight is just stuck. You can't really move it. Now it gets, you know, hit around, and rook F2. And Arjun Erigaisi wins a very nice game. He wins a very nice game against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. I guess they are playing... I don't know, if I'm totally honest. Yeah, I guess Arjun and Maxime are... I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how that works. Beats me. Like, I don't know. Maybe they all get 5th through 8th. I don't know. I actually don't know how this works. I would love if somebody could explain it to me. Because they were all in the previous round together. Anyway, Magnus and Hikaru. Magnus wins. Big win for him. And Fabiano Caruana getting some revenge against Vincent Keymer. That's all I have for you today. And tomorrow we will conclude the Freestyle Chess Grand Slam Tour, the second one from Paris, France. Folks, get some tickets in the description to the events. A couple of VIP tickets still remaining in Brussels and in London. If you use the code U18 GothamChess, you will get 50% off. But that's only for the young folks. Get out of here.